quality of the office is that in first step, we really try to listen to the client. I think every project we are working on is not really, even if it's an office project and we did 20 of them or 50 of them, I think it's always because of location, of the tenant they are looking for, of the special surrounding, and so on. It's a unique project, and you first have to have your own opinion what is characteristic for the project. But on the other hand, you have to listen to the client and to understand his needs and his own ideas. That does not mean that he has an architectural feeling and really explains us how the concept will work.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Creative Insider Podcast. In this episode, my guest was Holger Meyer, who is the owner and big boss at the office I'm working at. It was a little challenging and a little bit emotional for me personally to interview my boss or to interview the owner of the company I work at. But I think in the end, we gotten very loose, and you could really grasp what kind of person Holger is, and you can understand more of this amazing office I work at here in Frankfurt am Main, which is considered the Manhattan of Germany. And also the office has another branch in Munich and also one backup office in Romania, Bucharest. So we had covered the multiple topics in the conversation: how to get business, what is the environment for architecture in Germany, and in particular in these two cities, where the architecture is going, in which direction is going the architectural industry in Germany. So I think it's a very, very interesting conversation. And for me personally, it was a very interesting conversation because it's rare that you get 1 hour to sit together with your boss and talk and explore what kind of person he is. So I hope you're going to enjoy the conversation. Before we start, I want to remind you that you could have watched this podcast live just by joining the group of the Real Insiders on Patreon. You'll find the link below. It's just €5 a month. You can support the existence of this podcast. You get access to all the shows live. We are working for architects in Germany to get you points while watching the podcast. So that's not official yet, but it's ongoing. And also you get to participate in the monthly call and interact with the other group members. So I think it's a great networking system for like-minded people in the architecture industry. If you cannot afford to be a Patreon because of many reasons, you can support the podcast for free by just liking the video, sharing it on your social media so that we can reach more people, leaving a comment below, and subscribing to the channel so that we can reach a wider audience about architecture and design. So thank you very much. And before we start, a particular greeting to all the rest of the team at Holger Meyer Architektur. You guys are super great and it's super fun working with you. Enjoy the episode with Holger Meyer. Hello, Holger. Welcome to the Creative Insider Podcast.
Hello, Georgi. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you on camera too. Finally, we managed to do the podcast. So for the people who don't know you, you are my big boss because I work at Holger Meyer Architektur here in Frankfurt. And you are the first architect from Frankfurt. So I'm very happy to have you on. And you can tell a little bit of our office because I think you're more suitable than me to introduce who we are and what we do.
Well, I don't think I'm the first architect in Frankfurt. We're working every day on this, but that's quite a big scene we have here. So I would say we are one of the important players in the game. That is like this, and I think what really describes our office is that we are we are quite flexible in different tasks, and I think we are working with a lot of clients for more than 10 years, so they are repeating working with us every time. So I would say it can't be the case that we're doing everything wrong, that they always decide going on with us and developing architecture and new projects and asking us really early before they buy their plots and thinking of their projects. And they're really, I would say, interested in our opinion and in our feeling for the projects. And the real advantage, if you are so really mainly based in these two cities like Munich and Frankfurt, you know quite a lot of people, you know what everybody is doing, how they are thinking. You have the trust of the local authorities, and I think that's what the clients really like, and that's one of the reasons why they always come back.
Yeah, and no, I meant you're the first architect from Frankfurt on the Creative Insider podcast, because not everybody feels so comfortable to go international. But the podcast goes not only about what we do, but also who are the people on the podcast. So I'm very curious to discover more about your path and your history in the field of architecture, because as you said, it's a very established office with a lot of very good projects, cutting edge projects. So I'm curious, you personally, how did you decide you wanted to become an architect? When did the idea come to you to join this industry? Was somebody in your family an architect, or what was the story behind you joining architecture?
No, really the opposite. As my father said, I'm the black sheep of the family. Everybody is working in finance, in real estate, but not really architecture. So I was always kind of different. But the thing is that I really decided quite early to do that, and took a relatively straight way, not really knowing what is coming up with this decision. I think it's what we are doing is really a hard profession. Yeah, that's every day it's challenging. Every day you are working on new tasks, and you have to redefine yourself. You have to really fight for your office. You have to really struggle with always new problems. And maybe if I would have imagined how difficult and this profession is, I would have listened more to my parents. But anyway, now they are quite satisfied with what I'm doing. And I had always the idea, and that's how it started. My father asked me, and friends also, why will you be an architect, or why are you going to be an architect? I said, I want to work for myself. I don't want to work in a big company and big structure, and I want to be creative, and I want to design things. And I never imagined, and my father came up and said, do you know how many architects are really working for themselves and have their own offices? I don't know the number. It was only about 4% or something like that. And I went my way quite straight, and I got the opportunity to really start working on myself, because the office where I worked as a student in Darmstadt, Seifert Planung, really I started there during my studying in Darmstadt, working there. And when I finished, I made my first architectural competition on myself, and I won it. And Mr. Seifert, the owner of the office, said, okay, now the time came up. That's your project, and you have to start, and you do this project by yourself. The elder one in the office will support you, but you are the project leader. It's your design, and you have to build it. And so this started as in a different and in a faster way than I expected it. Yeah.
What was that competition for? What kind of building did you win?
Yeah, it was a quite large office building. It was the VR leasing. It's the Volks- und Raiffeisenbanken leasing daughter. It was a building with I think 500 working spaces and quite an innovative office concept for that time. And so we did really futuristic and different concept, and we won with it against Ingenhofen and others. And so it was quite a cold start in a fish basin. I didn't recognize how difficult it is. I had my first meeting with all the other, not only the client but all the engineers and so on. And that was really nothing you learned at university. Yeah, it was
No, indeed not.
Yeah.
No, it sounds great. And so you started there, and then you kind of become part of the office leadership at this office where it was your first basically professional experience. And
it was 2 years later. Then I was offered a co-partnership there. Yeah.
And this was happening because we have I work in the office, so we have some more, how do you say, long-term colleagues that are keeping the knowledge and the history of the office. So that was the beginnings were in the 90s, and it was still in Darmstadt. And now we're quite a few years later, as you said, a very established company. How did you keep up with the architecture field that it's so quickly evolving, and how did you manage to go through the different evolution of the office? Because I know the office at some point moved to Frankfurt, then we were MSM, then turned again Holger Meyer Architektur. So if you could tell a little bit of the story of all the transformation that has happened.
Yeah, I would say at the end, and if you look on other offices too, it's always a way of developing, and partnership in architecture is not always an easy thing. I was partner with Mr. Seifert, then he went out of the office because he went over 70. And so he said, okay, that's more or less your thing now to go on with the office. I took it over completely. And then I decided after some years working alone is a bit weird. Yeah, you don't really have a second opinion in a partnership. Maybe I was younger then, and I decided that I want to grow bigger and not only working in Frankfurt, and I can't do that when I'm only by myself as one partner in the office. And so the idea came up, so I connected with Kasper Schmitz-Mohrkramer, and we founded the office of MSM, Meyer Schmitz-Mohrkramer, together. The idea was that he is caring for the market more north of Frankfurt, so he was based in Cologne, and I said, okay, Frankfurt is good situation, and we decided, okay, we want to grow, and so after 2, 3, 4 years later, we had an office in Hamburg. Then we opened the office in Munich, and so it's difficult in a growing architectural office to do all the projects coming up on one side, caring for the architecture, taking care of having one straight design line, which really comes over the more and more projects, which is significant and quite similar to keep a straight line in the design guide of the office. On the other hand, you have much more organization stuff. You have the problem that you have to be parallel in Cologne and in Hamburg and in Munich. And so you lose time. And then we decided 2018, okay, I think it's a clever way if everybody concentrates on his side of the offices. So we decided to divide the office. I think that was quite good for both offices to develop it, a bit more concentration on Frankfurt and Munich. And I think it's always quite challenging having an office of 100 or more architects being involved in parallel 25 projects. That's around the number we have normally parallel in progress, and really keeping care of all the employees in Frankfurt and in Munich. We have the office in Bucharest founded as well. Our colleagues in Bucharest support our work, and especially during Corona, we learned how difficult it is to keep everything together and to be really in a straight contact with everybody in such a big office if you're really only working remote.
Yeah, indeed. But now I think we are quite flawless because I have the pleasure to work with a colleague of every other office, and we are pretty good at it now. You said something like when I was joining Holger Meyer, I of course here in Frankfurt, the architecture circle, it's quite rich of people, but also small. Everybody knows someone somewhere. So I knew someone that I was already working at the office, but of course I went on the website and went through the project, and I thought, okay, the projects are really, really beautiful. I really like them, and I think it's time to join this office because of the design quality. And also now by being in the office, I have access to all the competitions and I see what kind of work is done. So I'm curious, you mentioned that you wanted to become independent, to be creative, your success is also based on the quality of the work you do. So what is your design philosophy? Because from what I see, because you're always, as you said, a lot of people, a lot of offices, you're always running through meetings and through projects. What is the design philosophy for you in a project? What you try to achieve? What is your approach to design? To how did you build your style? If you can expand a little bit on that.
I think that the quality of the office is that in first step, we really try to listen to the client. I think every project we are working on is not really, even if it's an office project and we did 20 of them or 50 of them, I think it's always because of location, of the tenant they are looking for, of the special surrounding and so on. It's a unique project, and you first have to have your own opinion what is characteristic for the project. But on the other hand, you have to listen to the client and to understand his needs and his own ideas. That does not mean that he has an architectural feeling and really explains us how the concept will work. But I think there are too many concepts which are developed which are not really parallel with the understanding of the client. And I think that's the first important step. And I'm not really, I will compare it to art. I have problems with some artists who have always the same style. Yeah. For example, if you take, I don't know, if you know Uka, the one who's working with the nails, I find it's terribly interesting. I like these structures, but I wouldn't like to do all myself the same nail pictures, only with different structures. And when I look at art, I'm really fascinated by the life of Picasso, because he was always changing. He was always new, defining his understanding of art. And he was always searching for something new. And I think that's what's really the chance in architecture. I think for some buildings, a classical stone building is really the right solution. And on the other hand, can be at the same time, and so I wouldn't define myself in periods of work more than in types of or characteristic of tasks. Yeah. So where I say different tasks need different solutions, and different sites need different understanding of architecture. And so in Holger Meyer Architektur, it's possible that really parallel they are developing really different architectural ideas. And I'm really okay with that. Yeah. But I think there is an overall characteristic line that our buildings have a straight concept. They don't play with facades only to play with designs. They have always a function behind it. They are really, really clear in material use. And I think that's what's defined our architecture.
Yeah, and now, I mean, in this long history of the office, we have succeeded in many competitions. And have you developed some feeling? Because a competition is always, right, like a little bit of a jump in the void. Like you get the brief, and you start with your own site analysis and first concepts, and the options are basically multiple, despite the constraints that someone can give you. Have you developed some feeling, or do you have some feeling? And if yes, what is that? What it makes a competition here in the area in Germany or in general successful? Because we are very successful in exactly this field when and also, as you mentioned, with sometimes big competition, other very talented offices. What do you think when you make a project makes it successful? For example, I had talked to the 3XN guys, and they say always, despite the if they do something crazy like a shape wise, they always think if this shape really makes an extra point for the building, or that it has to have a purpose and not just being a shape. What do you have some feelings that when you do a competition, this might be okay, our winning point, or the thing that will make us stand ahead of the others?
Yeah, I think the competitions are always challenging, mainly because we do a lot of invited in competitions. And I think the last year was the most successful competition year in the history of the company. And you get, over the years, you get a straighter and straighter feeling what is the real target of a competition. In some cases, the clients, and maybe you worked for him already, and so it's a bit easier to get a feeling of where the idea have to go to. But I think the most important thing is that you could. And you always have to revise that during working on the competition. And you must explain the concept to yourself. And I think that's quite similar to what you said to 3XN. It's nice to doing a crazy shape, but you have to know not that it only looks good, but you must explain to yourself why are you doing that shape. Is it changing the urban surrounding? Is it opening new views, or is it only different because it's different and you are not rectangular because you are not in the mood for rectangular? So I think that's always the thing. And if you have to be on both sides, I'm sitting sometimes in the jury as well, and I think there you learn more about competitions than doing competitions yourself, because you have to decide in 2 or 3 hours what is really good architectural quality, what is the concept which could be explained easily and could be understood. It's completely understandable. And I think if you view on that from both sides, you are finding relatively fast a good solution. We are changing the tasks in competition. We are doing a lot of refurbishments in the office, and we are doing a lot of refurbishment in competitions. And there you have to learn to think in a different way as well, because the task is to keep most of the existing structure, because otherwise, for economical reason, it doesn't make sense to really make a refurbishment if you change too much. And so you have to quickly understand in only 4 weeks what is the quality of the existing structure and how is it possible to make as less changes as possible and to get a quality rise with really only little moves and only little impact in the existing structure of the building. And I think that's also challenging. And of course, to keep it short, yes, it's a sort of experience. The more competitions you do, the more juries you join, the more you learn to think straight and to explain yourself the concept sharply. And I think that's the way to success in competitions.
Yeah, and for the people who don't know, our office is spanning across 2 floors. So on the upper floor, it's our fun part of the office. Plus, there is this mysterious room with the mirrors where inside sits the competition team where the magic happens. And then downstairs we are the minions that make it buildable. And we see you across multiple rooms and multiple projects, but we get to see a little less from what happens behind the mirrored walls. What is the process in that team when you get the brief? Because as you said, you have to go between 25 projects or so. So does the team start giving you some ideas and then you review them, or you give them some ideas, they start developing? What is the ping pong game that goes on there when from the starting point to when we hand in some competitions in the finished project?
Well, first thing is that when we moved the office in 2018 in our new office here in Eschersheimer Landstraße, I said the most important thing is that the competition team is really sitting next to me, because every time I'm going in, going out, in between meetings, you have 10 minutes left. You can join them just by passing by and having a quick discussion, and maybe it's a question of finding quick solution. But on the other hand, maybe it's in 5 minutes just the understanding of the problem and taking it with you and being able to think about. That's better than we lose 2 days or so that 2 or 3 people are thinking about the problem. What we always also changed is we have a large television screen, as you know, and we have a sofa in front, and it's a bit of a lounge atmosphere in these competition rooms, something which I wanted as well. And we are really sitting there, and we have a sort of relaxing. It's not always standing and be on the run. You have to sit down, you have to concentrate, and even if it's only 5 minutes, to take your time to listen to the problem. And we have the screen that they could share their big screen with the whole team, and the whole team is part of the problem discussion. So you're sharing your screen, you're showing what you're working on, even if it's a floor plan or it's a correction of a rendering or whatever it is, and we discuss it together. And the first thing is sitting down, taking, even if it's 5 minutes, taking some time, and explaining your problem to everybody in the room. And so you always have a discussion forum. It's not really a closed job. Of course, there are some detailed problems every day. Somebody is talking me, passing by, running through or whatever. But the main idea is really everybody has to explain what he's doing, and all the others could bring up their opinion for a good solution. And of course, that sounds completely democratic. At the end, it's like this, and somebody has to decide. We have, for example, we have 3 solutions on the table, and we are not quite sure what is really the best. Then somebody has to go to say, okay, in the middle, right or left. Yeah, that's like this. But I think we improved this discussion process, finding really the best solution quite a lot just by the situation which is in that room.
Yeah, so basically through this brainstorming process. What did you say? Sorry?
The magic mirror room, as you call it.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting, because I remember the first time that I entered the office, I came from that door. It was before my interview. And you see this black door with these mirrors, and it feels very secret, and it makes you curious. It was like, then I thought for the first days when I started working at the office, I thought I wasn't allowed to go there. So people told me go to talk with the competition people, and I'm like, can I? So it's really interesting. And one thing that it's particular for the office is that, as you said, you are from the area here in Frankfurt, and then expanded through other cities, Munich in particular. So what is for you giving new shape to your city, where you basically have lived most of your life? And also, what is your opinion on the scene here in Frankfurt and in Munich about the German architecture? Because, I mean, Frankfurt and Munich almost every year make it in the top 10 of most livable cities in the world. So I'm curious to know, what is your opinion on the architecture scene, on the city development, if you think something is done particularly well, or something can be still improved?
Starting with the scene, I think both cities, and you're perfectly right there. That's a quite alive architectural scene. It's not only an architectural scene, I would say the whole real estate scene. Yeah, that's I always say, and that's in Frankfurt and in Munich quite similar. It's I always say it's around 200 to 250 people who are doing mainly the development of the city, if you say it like this. It's some people of the local authorities which are really have a mission, let's say. There's a group of architecture in both cities which are mainly working there and really defining a lot of developments in both cities, and it's developers. It's a changing scene. There are coming up new ones, but always slow. But there are coming up new people, and I think always interesting people. And there's a scene of the real estate consultants, which are really part of the scene for us as well, because we are really quite close to them in contact. And it's also the lawyers which are working for our clients especially. So that's the scene, and everybody is talking about everybody knows what project he is working on. And it's, on one hand, it's a disadvantage that it's quite a closed scene. On the other hand, it's an advantage, because the people who are really based in these cities, they're really interested in a quality development, because they stay there. They are not the ones coming outside from London, understanding a project as an Excel sheet. which has to spend money, and if it works, they are out. Yeah, building finished, sold, and running to the next city. So these local developers or these local players, let's see, this scene is really interested in politics, is really interested in the local politics, is really interested in developing the city, is interested in a timeline of 10 or 15 years, because after one project is finished, they are always working on the second and the third one, which is going on. And to keep it simple, they have to behave well because they want to play together again. And sometimes you can say somebody who is coming from outside is getting a fresher impulse into that game. That is okay. And that's sometimes okay because mainly all the same players are always discussing in the same sort of solutions. But on the other hand, you see how quickly, for example, Frankfurt and Munich as well develops, how open they are for modern architecture, how interesting parts of the city developed over the years. What in Frankfurt is the Museumsufer, the large developments which are really took place along the main river, how the inner city area with the high rises develops. In Munich, it's a different discussion. Or if you just start talking about a high rise, you have a great opposition. Everybody wants to keep the city flat. In Frankfurt, everybody sees it as a quality when the city is going vertical. So it's different sort of solution. Munich is more traditional based. Frankfurt is more innovative in architecture, maybe a bit more open. But Munich changed a lot because of the tech industry. Since Microsoft, Amazon, Apple, and Google are based in their German headquarters in Munich. The quality of architecture and the need of the tenants, and so changed quite a lot, not in the inner city areas, but especially in these parts. So I think the scene is really a quality for these cities, and that's typical for Berlin and for Cologne as well. And I think it's important that you are still open to do different things which come from outside, and that you have really an open view what is happening all over the world. Yeah, so that this scene is not looking too close. Yeah. So your second part of the question after the scene was, the first part of the question was?
No, it was basically that you covered most of my question. I'm curious because I'm now part of the scene as well, a few years, and I'm curious in your opinion if there is something. For example, I got to know through the podcast a lot of the people that are part of the Scandinavian scene, which is very popular around the world. Do you think that there is something that we can export abroad? Maybe because you mentioned this is something I didn't know, that the players here are local and they want to stay, and they also want to build a good environment for themselves because they are they're living in the city. Do you think there are some qualities of the architecture we do that we can bring abroad, or because I think the building quality in Germany it's extremely high. Maybe sometimes we lack a little bit of courage in some projects because of this. I think the players know that if you go too crazy with the shapes, the cost can explode. Is there some quality of Frankfurt that we can make global, or of Munich? What do you think what are the biggest quality of the architecture we do here?
Well, when we talk about the quality of the building quality, then it is really a high standard we have here. But I think on the other hand, it's a problem in Germany because we are building really too expensive. Yeah, we are energy-wise, we are really innovative, and I think we are quite forward, and I think that's important. But on the other hand, if you especially look on the housing situation, we build so expensive in Germany. We can learn a lot from, for example, the Netherlands, where they are building really a good architectural quality for much lower price, on a much lower price level. And I think that's so that there are so few people can afford housing in Germany. That's really a problem. And we know that, especially in that situation now where the interest rates exploded so much over the last 12 months. And so the housing market is really completely blocked down. What we can really import, I think you just said it, we have sometimes not really the courage to doing experimental projects, and that's nearly impossible in Germany. It's from the client side, from the local authority side. We had, I think Zaha did made 3 tries to win a project in Frankfurt, and her architecture was always good and interesting. It was every time it was blocked and came never to be realized. She's working all over the world, or she was working all over the world, and her office is now working all over the world. But I don't know, really not one project except the one at Vitra, but that's Weil am Rhein, which is really a Zaha Hadid project in Germany. And that's really characterizes how we are a bit. We are not experimental. But I think what we are doing in Germany and in these cities, we really are able to let grow cities and develop slowly an urban architectural quality where you find buildings that after 10, 20 or 25 years, they are really timeless. Yeah. I don't want to talk about my architecture. There are other examples, but we just talked about today in a meeting with a client who said, your 20 years old Metzler am Main building, would you build it the same way as it is? It was a competition. We won quite against quite good other architectural offices. And I thought over it this morning, and I said, no, really, the architecture itself and the facade, I wouldn't really do a different thing in this project by now. I would do the interior a bit different. I would work on the interior qualities and materials a bit different. But, and I think if you can say this, this is quite an important thing to realize. And I think that's one of the main qualities the good German architecture has. Yeah. And I think some of these show architecture is really not timeless. And you talked about the Scandinavian colleagues, and I really admire them because they are doing a really great job in between the gap, doing being experimental and making really solid, clear design. Yeah, and 3XN you talked about, they got in Frankfurt the high-rise prize for their project in Australia, I think it is.
Yeah.
And it's a refurbishment project, and I think it's really, it's a milestone project. And I think it's interesting that the German Deka Bank gave them the high-rise prize. Yeah. So it's experimental, but it's really straight and good design.
No, I think what they do quite well, it's putting their roots in their in the history of their architecture, and revisiting it in a modern shape, in a modern way. And I think, for example, my personal opinion on Frankfurt, because I did my thesis here, is that we should focus on doing more mixed use, so that the city it's a little bit full of surprises, because I come from Rome, where every single little street gives you a surprise, and I think that's something that it's missing on the urban scale in Frankfurt. Sometimes there is this problem with the zoning where you have just one type of building or the other. But in general, I think also what you said about the timeless design that it's done here, it's true, because also I had a accidental call with one of our clients on the project I'm working on, and we were talking, and he asked me how I am, and I said, I'm good. How do you like the project in the end? And he told me, it's nothing crazy, but in 20 years, I think we'll still look very good. So it's very, I mean, we didn't set up this, but this is what he told me on the phone. So, so it's something that must be true. One thing that I got to.
I want to repeat one part of your first what you said really at the beginning. Now, I think that's an important point you brought up. These mixed use, and it's not only a thing or a question of the zoning. That's a point. Really, all the investors, 5 or let's say at least 10 years ago, nobody wanted to talk about a mixed-use building. They wanted to buy office, housing, retail. Yeah, and there were straight categories that was completely different to New York, London, Paris, where they are all used to the mixed uses in the buildings. But that changes quite a lot, not dependent on the zoning, because the investors now like the hybrid buildings, they call it. It's not mixed use, they call it hybrid. And as you know from our office, we can't talk about that now. We are really working on really interesting stuff, really innovative stuff, which really will combine in a completely unusual way leisure, retail, restaurants, office in one building, in one structure, as a typical in Frankfurt in a vertical way. So I think there's changing quite a lot. And the city will change in that point of view in the next 10 years dramatically.
Yeah, I hope so, because we missed a couple of opportunities. I don't know, I can mention Europaallee here in Frankfurt, one of the biggest development in Europe. I think in the east side of the city, we missed a little bit of opportunity, where also we were involved as an office in a couple of competitions. And actually, that was my thesis project. I did an alternative for the city. So I hope, and I saw there is a big UN studio development in the city center that I'm really looking forward to be completed, because I think it's going to be exciting. There will be a big public area for everyone with food courts and public squares. So I think Frankfurt is going to get very exciting in the next decades. And one thing that I noticed when you talk to, because we have these quarterly meetings, or every time I have the opportunity to talk briefly with you in the everyday life, I have the feeling you, beside all the architecture skills that you have developed through your career that's quite long now, you have also a lot of knowledge in the business of the real estate. And beside we talk always about beautiful shapes, materials, and designs, but in the end of the day, what we do is basically designing real estate and real estate assets. Did you get this knowledge through the years or through your family? And how important is this kind of knowledge that you have in order to combine it together with your architecture skills?
Well, what I've always found, it's kind of boring always only talking to architects. Yeah, it's we are thinking the same way. We are really interested in a lot of things that I think we have all parallel. But I was always also in my surrounding and friends and family as well. There were always different topics. Yeah, and there are people who I have friends, they are lawyers. I have friends that are working in the financing area. I have friends that are working in real estate. I have clients which are always also friends. And so I think this being open to discussion, to hear, to listen to everyone, and really coming around the world and understanding how everywhere else the world is ticking. And I think that's the most important influence. You have to be always open, especially as an architect, because we have, for example, for our STOCKWERK Magazine, we had a large discussion with Raphael Gilden, who is the trend scout for Vitra. And he is so completely different view on the world. He has a completely different view on the way we work, how he thinks we will work in 10 years, and what he sees when he is in China or in America. And he is a consultant of a lot of large companies. And talking to him, and that's why I love making this magazine, is so inspiring, because you know what he's talking about, and you heard from it is some things. But if he's explaining it in his special way and his really view of the developments all around the world and how companies and workplaces and life changes, for all of us. And these are the moments where I say, okay, that's good, not talking about architecture, but seeing it in a different way. And I think all the successful architects are open to influence, to everything which influences them from outside, wherever it comes from.
And that's a good sign that I called my podcast the Creative Insider, not the Architecture Insider, that I talk to also different people, so that maybe I'm a good architect too. Let's see. No, and also you mentioned the magazine. This is a magazine that we do on a yearly basis every year, I guess, right? So it's a magazine where you work also with basically some of the people you are involved in in the work on the, like, are people that we work together with, right? If you can expand more on the concept of the magazine and how it started.
Yeah, the idea of the magazine is in opposition to the typical architectural picture books, which I find they're more or less boring. They are important, and of course we are living from the pictures of the realized buildings we did. But what we are looking for was a platform where we can talk why we are doing architecture, and not how the architecture looks like, why we are doing architecture and with whom we are doing architecture, and more about the team and the process than the result. And that's what makes this one interesting. I give just one example. At I think it was the first volume, we made an office building in Mainz. And I don't know what's the English word for Richtfest. I don't even know if there is.
Yeah, it's like the party you do when you complete the structure. I don't know if there is a certain word, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, okay. The Richtfest. And there were always photos, small photos they made to put the glasses on the piece of paper, and there was really interesting photos from the side, from the construction site. It was just concrete, it was steel, it was a part of a window, really detailed photos, and they were really, really little piece of art. I said, who made these photos? And one of our clients said, don't you know the client leader of the project leader of the client is really photographer, and he really likes doing that. And we just want to present it to him that the whole party is now designed with his photos. And so I said, well, that's really interesting to know. I'm sitting with him nearly every week, and we are talking so much, but I never knew that he's a photographer. And then we decided, okay, we're making a story with him in the magazine about developing projects, being part of a large developing firm, and having a hobby which is totally different, and which has a totally different eye on architecture and on detail, which I never realized. And that's, I think, these surprises in people, that's make the magazine interesting. And I have one large client. He gave me, it's one of our important clients, and we had now the volume 4 which came out, and he just texted me one morning, lieber Herr Meyer, if Stockwerks makes it possible to be taken home and completely read it in front of the chimney by a good glass of wine, then it needs to be a compliment for the one who initiated it. And I think these are the little stories. He wrote me some other things too, but he said it was so interesting to read about the people, about the new work stories. That's mainly based on new work, the last one. And that's a bit the part of the story, having fun doing it or having fun creating it, and getting a response from clients and or people who are working, we are working with, that they say, well, it's interesting to read something different and not just looking at your architecture.
No, it's a very beautiful issue for sure. We as employee get one copy every year, so it's exciting to see it. I think maybe if you have the time and if it's fun for you too, I think as a personal opinion with some experience in the field, it would be, in my personal opinion, extremely fun to have some hybrid version at some point where you maybe can read the Stockwerk, but also maybe you can listen to it as a podcast. Nowadays, this is the future. Being the more inside, having direct contact with the people, also feeling their voices, their energy, maybe having some vlogs or videos. That, in my opinion, would be like next level to have the I don't know, the Stockwerk podcast, which, I mean, you guys do it anyways because the interviews, you travel, you talk to people. Recording it, it's really easy. If you need any help, Holger, hook me up. I'm gonna let you know how to do it. It's not so hard.
Yeah. The paper thing is a bit old school, but I think doing it parallel could be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it could be something hybrid. You know, you mentioned hybrid use in buildings. I don't completely, you know, we have now this with books. We have books that you can listen. There's platforms like Audible that you can get every book and listen to the book. There is the Kindle, the Amazon Kindle, where you can have thousands of books in it. And it's handy because maybe you travel and want to take 5 books with you, but you don't want to fill your luggage with books. And there is also the physical books. So the physical books are beautiful because they have a smell. You can write on them. You can underline things. And I think I wouldn't agree to like completely dismiss reading like books, physical magazine, because there is its own beauty. But it's like different drinks, right? Wine has a certain taste. Beer has another. Whiskey has another one, and the same it's with media. So this is just an idea. I have read part of the magazine. It's really beautiful, and I think who can get it, because we get it. I know the clients get it. Is it just an exclusive for the inner circle of Holger Meyer, or is it also published somewhere on the website?
Yeah, we on the website and in Instagram we are publishing always some stories out from the magazine, but it's not really viable. That could be maybe the next step.
Yeah, we can put it on Amazon or just put it on our website. And so if people are curious and they know a little bit of German, they can check it out on the website. And I'm curious, in all these years of career, is there some project that you're particularly proud of, or that you were, or that was particularly, I don't know, challenging for you, that you learned a lot? Also, last week, I think, or 2 weeks ago, you went at the MIPIM. We once, I think, won also an award there. So is there some of the many projects that you have done, some project that it's really remarkable for you personal, or you have a personal connection to it?
Personal connection, yeah. Of course, you have a personal connection to the projects, which we are divided a bit. The ones you're really working yourself, you're really connected to the clients because they are really close. Yeah, you know them over years. You're connected much more to the project. And of course, you're right. If you have a milestone like winning a 2 times MIPIM award for the Michaelsburg project, then this is remarkable. Yeah, I think it was the first, and there wasn't any other German project which ever won 2 MIPIM awards in 1 year, because it was a special prize of the jury and the first prize in the category. So that's, of course, that is really special. What you always forget is the ones where you more started with, but you always have a connection to special situations. Yeah, and yeah, I never will forget that when we start a project and you get a call that you won a competition. And for me, it's always like that. I never forget these winning competition calls. It's like getting a MIPIM award, because that's always so nice. You're in a different situation. They mainly decide this, and it's really after work. You're not in the office anymore. It's 8 o'clock, it's 9 o'clock, it's 10 o'clock, and they're calling you or texting you and saying, okay, you won. And this is always, you're together with friends, you're drinking something. When I won the Frankfurter Volksbank, I will never forget. I was presenting the competition and left Frankfurt because we have to go to Munich. And I was with friends, and it was snowing. It was the beginning of December, and we were out, and we had a sauna evening with friends, and it was snowing. And I was standing outside in the snow, and we started our sauna evening. We had warm wine, and we stand there outside the small wooden cabin. And I got this call that we won the competition. And you always get connected to these situations. And when I'm walking along the building, to be honest, I always remember this situation where I was standing in the snow, and they called me and said, okay, you won it.
So you have a good, the same feeling. It's like, with some people that we have in our life, we have connections to certain moments or friends. So it's funny to have that connection with buildings. Never thought about it, that it's a particular. Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And I don't want to keep you much longer on the interview, because it's evening. You have a very full days of meetings every day. We always end the conversation with every guest by trying to create I call it the inspiring pot of ideas. Everyone shares what inspires them, what they like to do, because as creatives, sometimes we have to recharge our inspiration and our creative batteries. And I'm curious, what does inspire you in your free time? If you have some favorite book, music, or events that you like to attend, if you practice any sports, how do you get your creative batteries pumped up?
Yeah. Okay. if you go running and being outside, then you're always getting a clear mind, and I think that's important for me. As I already said, it's important always finding time talking to other people, not staying in your really narrow surrounding of your problems, your daily problems. Forgetting about that, talking to other people about other things. And the other thing is being open, coming around, seeing a lot of things. For me, the most relaxing thing, which I have not done until Corona started, is being in Africa, because it's such an inspiring nature. It's so quiet. It's so different to everything you have every day. And I think I really wanted to do it every 1.5 or 2 years being there, because if you do it too often, it gets too normal. You get used to it. And that's not really the right thing. I always want to be surprised. So next thing I wanted to do is Namibia. And relaxation, I think that is really something enjoyable for more than half a year or a year, just staying there for 5 or 7 days.
Is there a certain country that you've already been, that you've been, was it Namibia also, or somewhere else that you've been in Africa that you were hit?
South Africa, now Tanzania, now Kenya. So I came a lot around there, and it was always inspiring and really special. Yeah.
No, that's a great thing. I've never. You're the first one sharing this tip, so people go out there, check these countries.
You can't do anything else than just relaxing, and you really. I think when you see, I love these old books from the 50s. Yeah, for example, the Latique photographs from the 50s from the Côte d'Azur, where everything was so quiet and cool and really completely in a different way. And I think the world is changing so rapidly, and all the cities are so fast, and our life is going faster and faster. Our information is getting faster and faster. And so when you're there, you forget about everything. Yeah, because you're not really connected to the world we know. And I think there are not so many places, and everybody loves a different place. I think it's not about Africa, it's about the place where you have be your real quiet island. Yeah.
No, that's great. Well, Holger, thank you very much for taking part on the Creative Insider podcast. I invite everyone who hasn't been aware of the work of Holger Meyer to visit the website and visit our Stockwerk, the Instagram. I'll put all the links in the description. And thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.